Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Football Savant podcast. I'm your host, Travis Tyler. Today is Thursday, December 1st, 2022, and we're talking NFL post-Thanksgiving stuff, a lot of playoff picture stuff. Um, and I'm joined by big football fanatic, big-time Miami Dolphins guy, Paul Conley, who we've had on the show before. So, Paul, welcome back, man.
Thanks. I think the Dolphins are 8-5-0 since I was last on. So
Yeah,
yeah, let's keep that going. I'll come
yeah.
on every week if it means a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean they're in good shape right now, 8-3, second seed in the AFC. So we'll get in more into that later. Let's first start with the Thanksgiving games. You know, we had Detroit and Buffalo, Dallas and the Giants, and Minnesota and New England. What stood out to you in those games?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm not a Buffalo Bills fan
Yeah,
in any stretch. I mean, I was rooting
right.
hard for the Lions, but you got to give the Bills a lot of credit. I know it's the Browns, I know it's the Lions, but the fact that they had to deal with all the snow, all the travel, a Lions team that's frisky, especially on Thanksgiving, they had to go from Detroit back to Buffalo, which I thought was a weird decision, but then
Yeah,
also came back to Detroit to play a 12:30 Thursday game. And the fact that they came out of that, regardless, at the end of the day, you're just trying to score more points than the other team. And they did that. It's
right.
credit to them because they could have been, a game back of Miami. That was huge. Josh Allen, as much as I think he's overrated, he made a big time throw late in that game that really showed why he is, no doubt he's a top 10 quarterback.
hmm
Uh, and so you gotta give him credit.
Yeah. I thought, Buffalo's still a really great team, even though they've had those struggles recently. And I think I don't know who's come back on that defense, but they've had a lot of injuries on that defense this year. Detroit was coming back with a lot of key offensive guys that had been injured that uh, going into that game. And look, they put themselves in the situation to win that game down the line, which you don't see a lot with the Lions, especially against those kinds of teams. It's just you gotta make that kick first of all. And there's some coaching I guess time mismanagement there. I mean, you got to with Allen's arm and the weapons he has, you kind of got to. It can be difficult to balance that. How much time you're leaving for them on the clock, and I think it's worth pointing out that the corner who had been covering Stephon Diggs all the way up until that play kind of shut him down for the most part, or all the way up until the drive before that, it kind of shut him down for the most part. And then as soon as he got knocked out of the game, Stephon Diggs kind of went off and made that catch to set up that last field goal. So, as a Lions fan, there's probably a little homerism in there, but they they a lot of people are complaining about close calls don't really count. I mean, that's true, but you see progress when you look at this Lions team going into all their games. I mean, last year they were 0-11-1 at this point. Now they're 4-7. So it's headed in the right direction, I think.
No doubt. But I think if you're a Lions fan, you have to be sitting there thinking, we had it 3rd and 1 with the game in our reach, and we throw probably a 20% pass.
Yeah,
Granted, if it hits, you go up, but even if you go up, you still have to go play defense
yeah,
against Josh Allen with a minute and a half or whatever was left. Like, to me, they have the Lions' strength is their offensive line. You
yeah,
need a yard, and let's get the yard because I don't remember, it was a 48, 50-yard field goal that they
yeah,
relied on to tie it. I mean, I
yeah.
kind of thought
That's
this was some like gimme, and they
yeah.
could
That's
get
some of
the
the
next
game
one. Like, get the
mismanagement I was
first
talking
down,
about.
then
Yeah,
take your shots.
yeah. That was some of the game mismanagement I was talking about. I will say, in terms of getting that yard, the Lions were playing with their two backup guards that game, and it was screwing them on a lot of run plays on that situation. Like there were not necessarily late in the game, but early, especially in the third quarter, I think they were getting stuffed by a lot of on a lot of short yardage gains just because those guards were getting penetrated so quickly. And then I did see another angle of the replay of that last throw, and there were two other guys that were wide open that he should have thrown to. I mean, know he was blitzed and he didn't have a lot of time to get that ball off. But yeah, so
I think that was the play
there's
call. I mean, it was
yeah,
that's where we're going with this ball, and that I think that's the biggest problem. It's like you can't throw it there. Like
yeah.
you just you
No,
can't
I'm
do
with
it.
you on that. It's just yeah, it's some of it is also execution in the way the game was flowing.
No
So,
doubt, no doubt.
yeah. Um, anything stand out from you in the other Thanksgiving games?
I mean, Dallas is a top 5 team. I know the Giants are
Yeah,
limited. I think the Giants are a well coached team. They're probably a 4-7 team versus a 7-4 team.
yeah,
But Dallas just they have another gear. Um, they're solid defensively, and now what they're able to do with Zeke and Elliott or Zeke and Pollard,
yeah,
plus Dak and Lamb, and I mean they've got a dynamic offense. I mean it's Dallas, so who knows what happens? They're gonna have a tough time uh, they're gonna have a tough time when it comes to what they're able to do with um, when it comes to playing in the playoffs and going on the road.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think they're a different team in those elements, but I mean, they have the offense, they have the defense. They've been much more impressive than I was expecting all season. So, Paul, out of all the games that happened last week, outside of Thanksgiving, what was the best one that you think you saw?
I think it's got to be Tennessee Cincinnati. And is
Okay.
it the most exciting game? No. That's the overtime back and forth Raiders
Yeah.
versus Seahawks. But I don't think either of those teams are true contenders. I think
Right.
we I think we saw one of our first playoff games last week when
Okay.
it Cincinnati. I mean, really a gutsy win on the road in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Hats off to them. I thought that was just a remarkable win. I mean, I thought there was some other exciting games. I mean, if you look at the two games that ended on the 2 pointers, and then
Yeah.
watching the Eagles run all of the Packers was exciting. But
Yeah.
to me, football, a true playoff game was played in Tennessee this past weekend.
Yeah, it was a very sloppy game, but I definitely see the argument for that one, especially with the quality of football over some other teams. I had that Raiders Seahawks game just because it was the only overtime game of the week, and it was good to see Josh Jacobs take off on that last run. He's been running okay this year, but he hasn't had anything like that in a long time. And just it's an offensive league. There was tons of offense in that one, not a lot of defense. It was not. I agree with you. They're not really playoff teams, but it was a fun game to watch from an entertainment standpoint.
Yeah, I think the Raiders have a playoff game this week in the Chargers. I know we're getting ahead, but watch out
Yeah,
for the Raiders team. A little frisky.
yeah. I mean, to me, that's more about Raiders playing spoiler than anything else. But
Maybe so.
um, so sticking with non-playoff teams for a second here. The Panthers fired Matt Rule a couple weeks ago. They're 2-3 since, but not great. But they definitely seem to be playing a little bit better. And Denver's not a great team, but they beat them by 2 possessions on Sunday. Does the interim coach Steve Wilks have a shot at that full-time job?
So let me remind the audience, if you recall, when you asked me on this very podcast,
Yep,
who's
yep.
going to be the head coach at Nebraska,
I
I
absolutely remember that.
predicted
Yeah,
a then employed by the Carolina Panthers, Matt Rule. I feel good about that one.
yeah,
Stop
yeah, you
one.
should.
I
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
I got one prediction going my way, 99 going the other way. But no, I mean, no, I don't think so. I mean,
yeah.
I think that, hey, listen, they win out and win that division, not win out, but if they win that division and go win a playoff game, sure. But
That's
I
a
don't
tall order for that team.
I don't think they
Yeah,
have the talent base. And I think that at the end of the day, Matt Rule was going to be successful. They had a successful program they were building. I mean, think if the Cade York misses that field goal week one, and the Panthers are right around 500 right now. Matt Rule's still the head coach.
yeah,
I think Matt Rule was a better coach than Steve Wilks. And I think it really comes down
See that
to,
argument? Yeah.
I don't know that there's a team with maybe Houston, that has a worse quarterback situation. I mean, they've
Yeah.
got three guys that they've played, none of them are good. So they need to draft a quarterback and build the right way. And I think you'll see them give a coach a 5, 6 year deal, kind of like a Dan Campbell in Detroit.
Yeah.
And you'll see them try to build this thing to be a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that. And I mean, on the Wilkes point, he was a head coach in Arizona in 2018 and went 3-13. So overall, he is 5-16 as a head coach, and he just doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to take a team in the right direction as a head coach. He seems like a great assistant coach, but I don't know if he's really cut out for the NFL head coaching job at this point. I mean, you
Agreed.
see people get those retreads, or like Belichick getting his second chance after the whole Cleveland situation, but that's certain coaches can do that, and I don't think that he's necessarily one of them. Back to the Seattle and Vegas game. Um, Seattle's in the playoff hunt, trying to win the NFC West. Did that game give you concerns about the Seahawks going forward?
I mean, it depends on what the concern would be. I think that I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know if
Right.
they're really a true. I mean, they might sneak in. It's going to be them or the Giants, I think, probably. Just
Okay.
because Tennessee at that bottom 7 spot's not very good. I mean, could it be,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, we'll see Washington, them, and the
Yeah,
Giants.
we'll get more into that part a little later, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but I think Seattle is. I mean, they're good on offense. We've kind of proven that. I keep waiting for Geno Smith to regress, and he just
yeah,
really.
it's not happening. Yeah,
Their defense, though, I think they have a certain game plan that they can run against certain teams. Arizona, they played
yeah,
fairly well again, and and Tampa, they played fine defensively against Tampa, but Tampa's not very good on offense. So I think when you see them against an upper echelon offense, they really seem to struggle.
yeah. I've seen that. Like they give up a ton of points. I mean, that Detroit game was 48-45 in the final, but they have a lot of young defensive talent. I just think they haven't really come into their own on that side of the ball, and their offense is overachieving. I mean, Kenneth Walker just, I mean, monster for that offense. That was something they needed. They didn't have that running game that they usually do once Chris Carson retired, and that's definitely helped their offense. But they're definitely more of an offensive team at this point. Um, so my concern would be with their defense going forward as
No
well.
doubt. And
Yeah,
I mean, I think that if you're a Seahawks fan, you're happier now about where you're at than if you had paid Russ $250 million to do what he's doing in Denver.
yeah. I mean, everybody was predicting the Seahawks to be like one of the top three worst teams going into this season, and you know, to be what 6-5 in playoff contention, that's pretty good achievement. I think probably speaks to uh, John Schneider as their GM and Pete Carroll as their coach.
The reality is that
Getting some fines.
everybody wants to crown the 49ers, but at the end of the day,
It's only a
this
game difference right now.
they're a game back
Yeah,
and they're going to host San Francisco at their place. I mean, good luck. I mean,
yeah.
going into Seattle and winning is not
That's
going to be easy.
exactly. Speaking of the 49ers, they shut out the Saints this weekend. Um, was that just the 49ers defense, or should we be a lot more concerned about the Saints offense?
Well, I mean, they fumbled down there by the goal
Yeah.
line. They had, I mean, it probably should have been 7 or 10 points for the Saints, which obviously is still a concern. I mean, Andy Dalton's their quarterback, and he's in, I believe, his 13th year.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have a very low ceiling with Andy Dalton as your quarterback. Are they a bad offense? Probably. I mean, they don't really seem to have the magic with I don't think Pete Carmichael's the guy that's
Okay.
going to really come up with the game plan. I mean, if you look at they've played in a lot of low scoring games. They haven't really had a dynamic offense. I mean, other than Kamara, Olave's been nice, but they
Yeah,
don't really have a true, offensive threat. I mean, they probably are lucky to be where they're at. I mean, they're in that division where
yeah.
it's
Losing
ugly.
record could win that. Yeah,
Yeah, right now, I mean, that's the case. So I think that San Francisco defense, no doubt, they are
yeah,
very, very good. But I think that was more of the futility of the Saints than anything.
yeah,
And we'll
yeah.
see this week. We'll
I
see.
think, yeah, I think it's more of a quarterback issue at the most because I mean, Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston are your quarterbacks. You got an issue, because especially with Dennis Allen, defensive head coach, not you know not known for his offensive abilities, and you're going from Sean Payton, who's one of the best offensive minds around football right now. So, um, and uh, to your point, they don't really have a true number one receiver. Michael Thomas is always hurt or incredibly inconsistent. Jarvis Landry's been hurt a lot, and I don't think at this point in his career he's a number one. And it's too much to ask a rookie like Olave to be that number one guy.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
so there, yeah, I agree with you on that. Let's jump into some more like broader stuff around the NFL. Sean Payton brought up on I forget what show he was on, but he brought up the possibility of the NFL going to the NFL draft going to a lottery system, like the NBA, I believe the MLB just started it. So I think the NFL is the only American pro sports league that doesn't do it right now, which is interesting and a whole separate topic. But do you see any possibility of the NFL going to a lottery system for non-playoff teams in the draft?
It's a possibility, but I'm not sure that I think that might be trying to fix a problem that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I
You
think
don't see widespread tanking in the NFL.
what he was getting at, I don't know if you saw the clip or anything, was that Caleb Williams is the kind of quarterback that any NFL team would just purposely tank for. And so to avoid that, to avoid teams, purposely playing badly next year just to get the best quarterback that's come out in a long time in the draft was his reasoning for wanting the lottery to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you go back and look, the 2020 draft with Tua, Herbert, and Burrow is right there with like the 84 draft or the draft 03 draft with multi Pro Bowl type quarterbacks, and it was tanked for Tua. And
Yeah,
Joe Burrow emerged as the guy, and then there was debate between Herbert and Tua. So I always get nervous when we're
yeah,
banking on one guy. I mean, Caleb Williams could get injured. He could regress. There's a lot of things that can happen with him. I think C.J. Stroud's going to be just as good. Now, whether he goes back to Ohio State or who knows
right.
what
He could be in
there.
a completely different draft class.
Yeah, I mean, so there's just a lot of things that need ironed out. I think it's fixing a problem that doesn't exist because I'll tell you, if you're the Seahawks, great example. Let's just say they missed the playoffs by a game and now they're in the lottery and they win the lottery. Well,
Yeah,
now we've really changed it. I think the NFL, when it comes to parity of their teams, does it about as good as anybody. Now, if you want to say, hey, the bottom five teams are in some sort of lottery or something like
I think
that,
that's what the MLB system was for the
maybe.
new way. Yeah,
But I think what it does is, like right now, if you're the Texans, you've pretty much got that one spot locked up. So
yeah,
everyone else is kind of still playing hard. And I think that in the NFL, you have to play hard. Now, organizationally, teams will tank, but when you're out there on the field, you have to play hard. You can't not. You'll get hurt.
yeah, yeah. And then like I've always been against the lottery system. I like the way the NFL does it. I didn't like when the other teams were going to lottery or the other leagues were going to lottery systems. And we've seen in the system, I think it was like in the NHL, the Rangers had like an extra pick or something, and they also like in the bubble made it very far in the playoffs. I don't remember what round they got knocked out in, but they ended up with the number one overall pick after making the playoffs that season.
Yeah.
So that a team like that winning the lottery ruins the parity of the league. And I think, we're seeing there's a lot of complaints this year about scoring being down and some teams not be having such good records. Well, to me, that just says that the league's doing something right in terms of parity, where there's teams aren't going to be destroying each other every week.
I mean, outside of Houston and the Rams because of injuries, and
Yeah,
maybe Denver, there's not a lot of bad teams. If you look at the bottom, and maybe they're bad teams, but they're competitive. I mean, the Raiders,
right, right.
we've mentioned a few times, they're in probably that bottom 10 teams, and they were within a point of Kansas City in Kansas City.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, they're competitive. I think the NFL, is the most competitive of all the sports. If I'm the other sports, I would do what the NFL does. If I'm the NFL, I would do exactly the opposite of what most of the sports do.
yeah. Well, that's the way it is now. So I guess we're saying keep it the way it is. Um, so about those bad, like you said, there's not a lot of bad teams, but there are some teams, underachieving or playing very poorly. Um, so of those coaches of those teams, who do you think is on the hot seat?
Well, I mean, I think you can't look any further than Nathaniel Hackett in Denver.
Yeah, yeah, that's
He's gonna be
definitely
one.
one.
He's gonna be one and done.
Yeah,
He, you know, I gave him a lot of credit for hiring the game management strategist or whatever, because I do think that that's a good move. But then when you give up play calling, and then you start going, well, wait a minute, you're not really managing the game. You're not inspiring the team because they've quit on him,
yeah,
and not calling the offense. And if you are, the offense is one of the worst in the league. What are you
yeah,
doing? Like, what are you doing here? And
yeah,
I think with new ownership, I think they'll just say, hey, listen, he's not the guy.
yeah. I mean, that's a good point. The current ownership isn't the people that hired him. And then, they're 3-8 now. I think I saw something going into last week's game. They would have been 9-1 if they averaged just 18 points per game. And he's an offensive background, offensive coach, former offensive coordinator. So I think he's definitely on there. I think Kingsbury's got to be on there with the way the Cardinals are playing. They're 4-8 now. We're a playoff team last year. I know they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins for a lot of that, but it's part of the game. You got to deal with those absences. Dennis Allen, the way the Saints are playing, might be on there, especially another one and done. And then obviously Houston with that 1-9-1 record. I think Lovey was on borrowed time anyway. So
Yeah, but you're giving Lovey. I mean, some of those guys are first year coaches. Lovey,
yeah,
Houston's a mess. If they want to blame Lovey, that's fine. But they
no,
have no.
I'm not saying it's all on him. I'm just saying
The
easy.
Kingsbury
There's
one,
an easy scapegoat there.
yeah, the
They
Kingsbury one's
tend to be that
interesting.
kind of organization lately.
The Kingsbury one's interesting. I personally believe that they have an organ. I think they're one of the bottom five organizations in football.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the fact they rewarded Kyler when they didn't need to, and Kyler's not the guy. Like, he's not the leader that you
They've
need to
just
be.
taken steps back this year, which
He's
is
talented.
expected in the league. But I mean, for what you expect out of that team, it's not performing the way you would want it to.
Agreed.
Um, so let's jump to a certain player that's making some headlines lately. Odell Beckham Jr. still out there offering his services.
Pass.
They're what?
I don't know the flights. I don't know the details of the flight situation, but
Oh yeah,
kicked off a plane. Just it's a distraction, and I don't even know how good he is anymore. I mean, I know
yeah.
he
I'm just
tore his ACL 9 months ago, and he's
yeah,
in his 30s.
yeah.
So,
Let's just entertain the argument. Where
all
do you
right,
think he ends up?
I tell you, I don't have a good answer. Baltimore maybe. Not
Okay.
that they would take him, but they're the team that jumps out of me. He's not going to go to a team that's not a contender.
Yeah.
And the Rams aren't a contender. The Packers aren't a contender. Those were the two teams that were interested. Baltimore or New England. Does New England
Okay. I
take
mean,
a chance and say, hey, our culture can kind of mesh him in here?
yeah. I think
I don't
Dallas
think
really
it
wants
does.
him. So Dallas has really wanted him. So they don't have a true number two receiver right now behind CD Lamb. I would say maybe you count Gallup or Brown, but I think he's an improvement over those two guys.
Yeah, but like if I'm da I mean, that would be a Dallas move though.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what
Got
I'm saying.
something going really well. Let's mess with it.
I mean,
Don't mess with
yeah, yeah, well, exactly. That's a typical Jerry Jones move. I mean, I only go with that because out of the teams that they've talked about for him, that makes the most sense. Unless he wants to go back to the Giants, like they've been talking about. I mean, they've had the Cowboys and the Giants talking about adding him most recently, and there was a third team in there too, but I don't recall who that was. Um, let's jump into that playoff picture now. That we've kind of alluded to some scenarios out there. Uh, starting the AFC is kind of set. Well, not set, but uh, they have fewer teams in it. Let's say you got Kansas City and Miami at the top, with Tennessee, Baltimore, and then the wild cards are Buffalo, Cincinnati, and the Jets right now, with New England and the Chargers sitting there a game behind the Jets. So how do you see that playing out?
it. It all depends on what the Jets want to do here. If they're going to play inspired football for Mike White, they have a talented enough team. The Patriots, the Patriots season's on the line tonight.
Yeah,
They host Buffalo. They beat Buffalo. They're right in the thick of things. If they lose, I think they're probably out.
yeah,
Chargers, the Chargers are hanging around. I think that whether it's Cincinnati or Baltimore as the wild card, and whether it's Miami or Buffalo as the wild card, those, the 5 and 6 seed are pretty much, unless there's a major injury, set. That 7 seed is going to be interesting. I would
yeah,
say, I always think that Justin Herbert finds a way to lose games. So I think that continues, and I think he misses the playoffs for a third year in a row. Um, and I think it's either New England or the Jets, and really it comes down to, can either of those teams beat Buffalo?
yeah. I mean, New England has Buffalo tonight.
Yep.
I, I I don't remember exactly what the Jet schedule was, but I remember that they have at Minnesota coming up. I think so. That's going to be a tough one. There's some games they could lose there. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
no doubt. I mean, they end with Miami, but I mean, it's not, they got the Vikings, the at the Bills, at the Vikings, home to the Lions, home to the Jaguars, at the Seahawks, at the Dolphins. Uh,
it's not a cakewalk, but
they're not going 500 with those 6 games. I'm telling you that right now.
okay. I mean,
So it's
it's
going to
not.
take 10 wins to get into the playoffs. So to me, the Jets
Yeah,
win the team. It's got to be the Patriots or the Chargers.
gotcha. How about that NFC picture here? We're talking Philly, Minnesota battling out a game apart at the top. Um, San Francisco's the three leading the West right now. Tampa with that losing record is leading the South at 5-6. Then you got Dallas and the Giants and Washington. And then Seattle's a half game out. Atlanta's two, and Detroit is 2.5 with 6 games left to play. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think Seattle's going to end up getting in, just because Washington and the Giants, I mean, they got each other in this
Yeah, they
weird
play each
spot
other
where
twice.
two out of 3 weeks, and
Yeah,
Washington has them Giants by Giants. So this coming week is a playoff game. It's the first of a 2-round playoff game for the Giants and Washington. Do they split and kind of keep each other both in it? I don't know, but I think it's going to be. I think Giants are going to be the team left out at the end. So I
yeah,
think it'll be Tampa. I think it'll be Philly, Minnesota, and San Francisco to win the divisions, and I think the wild cards will be Seattle, the Washington football team or Commanders, and the Cowboys.
Dallas. Yeah, 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 and yeah, I think the Giants fall out too because I mean they have those 2 games against Washington. Think they might have 2 against Philly left. somebody's schedule I looked at had two against Philly left. I don't remember which one it was. And then no, they already played Dallas twice, didn't they? Yeah, but anyway, those their schedule is really tough.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Philly twice plus the Vikings. Uh,
yeah,
that's a brutal schedule. I
I th
mean, I think they
yeah,
might maybe they win one more game. I don't
yeah,
see I don't see 10 wins, let me tell you that.
yeah. 10 wins is going to get there. Uh, Seattle probably has the best shot. I mean, they got the Rams twice. I mean, they do play the 49ers and the Chiefs down the line, but that still should get them towards 10 wins there. Atlanta has the easiest schedule, but they're the least trustworthy team of all those teams in the picture, I'd say. Um, I mean, they only play one team above 500 the rest of the way, which is Baltimore. Well, that'll be interesting to watch as it plays out. Real quickly, minute left. Give me a couple games that you're looking for this season or this weekend.
I mean, we got two elite games this week.
Yeah,
Miami travels to San Francisco, and the Bengals and Chiefs playing. Those are going to be must watch, fun games. I can't wait.
playoff preview there. Yeah, I love that. And
Super
then
Bowl preview in one of them, maybe.
you also got the Jets in Minnesota and Washington and Giants that we were talking about there. Um, yeah, that's going to be a good weekend of football. It's gonna be a good one to watch.
Can't
Uh,
wait.
yeah, Paul Conley, thanks for joining the show, man.
Thanks. Take care.